Hello everyone, welcome back or welcome to my channel, The Inked Reader. My name is Eva and today I am finally putting up a video that I had promised weeks ago, and then for a reason or the other I didn't get around to film until today, which is basically end of February. So I'm talking about my spoilery review of the Fantasia Arc by Berserk. By Miura. I finally read chapter 41. Oh my god, we are not starting on the right foot here. So I've read volume 41 at the end of last year in December, I believe. I finished what is out by Miura before his passing, and I took 2 months to think about what I wanted to say in this video. And I think the fact that it took me so long to decide what I wanted to say about the end of Berserk from a point of view of Miura, and so I know that for a few people the Fantasia arc has actually not ended, and it was ended by another mangaka at a later date, and those chapters I believe are out, so are available. I've not read them. And for some other people I heard, no, you know, this is the conclusion of the Fantasia arc with volume 41, and then it might resume by another mangaka, but it's gonna be another arc. Whatever, I made the decision that at the moment I don't know when I will reach out for, you know, Berserk, that it's not written by Miura, so chapter, you know, volume 42. I know I will. It might happen in a week time, but it might not happen for a year. I have no idea. I do honestly struggle a bit with moving on from his art, and especially because before I say anything else, I must say that the art is just breathtaking. And I think from, you know, volume 1, which was already outstanding, to where we are at the end, with all the demons and the monsters, the development of his art as well has been outstanding, and I've been loving the art so much, and generally think that his art style makes this so epic, and I will miss his art because I can't deny the fact that, you know, if you take away the amazing plot, which you can't, and the amazing characters, which you shouldn't, and just consider the art, this is the GOAT. I never seen such stunning and creative art, because I think when it comes down to monsters and demons and creating something I've never seen before, having read a few things, manga included, it's not that common anymore to surprise me or create something that I need to just take entire minutes to just stare at the panel and understand what is what, and understand what kind of monster is this, how creative it was. And I did that repeatedly with Berserk throughout all 41 volumes. So just to say, I am in awe of his art style. And I also think maybe I postponed this video as much as I could because I'm just generally sad that this is left unfinished. And a lot of people will say, well, but he told the general arc, or whether he wanted things to go to someone else, so eventually it might be actually finished and have probably a general direction that he would have taken. My argument is it's never going to be the same. And you might say, well, it's obvious, but even knowing step by step how he wants this character to end up in the end is never going to be the same as if he did it himself, because whoever's going to take over, I am sure they will make him justice as much as they can, but it's a different individual. And so yes, the end game might be the same, but the way these characters will go there, even just the dialogue they're going to have, is going to be different than what Miura would have done, because we're just different individuals. If we had to describe a scene, the same exact scene, we would have some commonalities, but we would also have our unique perspective on the scene. Doesn't matter how many people you ask to write this scene. So there is a part of me that's been stubborn, and it's still stubborn to these days, and just say I don't want to read anything else on Berserk, because for me Miura and Berserk come together. You can't take one without the other, and I hope I change my mind. But at the moment this is how I feel, and so I'm heartbroken because this feels unfinished. And I also realized that I struggled probably to put up this video because I struggled to come up with things to say about the Fantasy arc. Because while all the other arcs I had a lot of things that I wanted to dig deep into, delve into, a lot of things I loved. The Fantasia Arc, it to me is uncompleted. To me is something that, of all the arcs, is probably my least favorite. Not considering the art style is probably my favorite, but of the plot is my least favorite. And I know this is gonna be pretty controversial and an unpopular opinion. I don't care, it's just mine, okay? You take it, you leave it. The world is not gonna change whether you decide to do with it. I think for me, for example, the journey of Casca, so Casca being traumatized, having the level of trauma that it's so complex and so deep that her own psyche has changed, that she has dissociated to a point that she's not Casca anymore for, you know, the majority of the arcs in this series. She's this kind of non-verbal, almost childlike woman, or, you know, yeah, I just used to see her like as a big child, and she's so traumatized that she doesn't have any memories, and she's skin deep afraid of, you know, the demons and therefore of gods, because of what gods also represent and the Berserk and everything that is inside of himself. So I understand where her fear of him comes from, and also you attacked her at one point and almost hurt her again. So I completely understand where then, you know, the primal fear that she has toward gods comes from, and it's completely justified. Yet we go on this immense journey in the hope that she will remember herself, who she was, what happened to her and after. But what happens is that in this one, she does end up remembering, you know, how she came to join the Band of the Hawk and, you know, everything that got up to the eclipse scene, but she doesn't remember anything else. She, you know, I feel like in a sense I was hoping to go on this journey with Guts and Casca for her, not necessarily to go back together with Guts, that is her choice, to be fair, to be with anybody ever again, but at least being able to remember what happened and remember that there are two sides to him. And yes, he is someone who's got a lot of, you know, deep darkness inside, but it's also the guy who's been through hell and back in order, you know, to support her and to heal her. And she can't remember shit. She can remember like just the Band of the Hawk and not what happened. Which I know that eventually if Miura had continued on, or if I continue on things, you know, she will probably regain her memories, or most of them. But I still felt I wished she had regained all her memories in these. I'm very conscious that that's not how trauma works, that, you know, it might leave gaps for you, you know, your brain tries to protect you, and so it might leave gaps for you in order, you know, to live your life. I just said that with me understanding how it works and the trauma, and I found that quite believable. I just found a bit disappointing on a reader-only perspective, the fact that we had gone on this massive journey, we go through all of these arcs for her to regain her memories, and then she gains just a slice of them. And we, you know, not all the fucking rest. And she's clearly still terrified of Guts. On, you know, an instinct level, it's telling her something is wrong, which she might be right. But I just felt like their story is so incomplete, and I would have loved to see Miura pursuing and continue to, you know, to put together their story, if that's what their destiny to be, or maybe decide that they need to go separate ways. But I would have loved to see his take, and I don't think I'm gonna be able to see exactly what he had in mind because unfortunately he's passed. So yeah, other people will take over, they will make of Guts and, you know, Casca's story whether they thought maybe Miura wanted it to be, but it's not going to be exactly the same. And I'm always going to be left with this question in my mind of how did Miura, even, you know, small dialogue by small dialogue, how would he have played out? Because so the fact that the Fantasia Arc is my least favorite is nothing to do with Miura in itself, it's just the unfortunate life events, and clearly it's not no one's fault. It's just a genuine reaction that I had and I wanted to share with you. I also must say this is my first read of Berserk, and this is such a complex, nuanced series that I can't even pretend to come here and say, oh, I've grasped all of it and I can make my final opinion and my final decision on it, because I do genuinely believe that this needs reread after reread maybe without gaps. I made a mistake. I took too much of a gap between the previous arc and this one, just because the deluxe edition had not come out and I was pretty stubborn, and I decided I wanted to experience Berserk in this like larger format, and I refused to buy the normal volumes and read it back to back. So the first 3 arcs I think I read back to back, and then I took a huge pause of months, and that took me out of the story, because in the meantime I consumed so many other media. And I do believe that, you know, if you can binge read Berserk, you might get a better experience or a more full experience than I had. Personally, I'm someone who, if I consume things back to back, in general, it's probably for the best, which is a lesson that I preach and I don't follow, to be fair, because I've just got so much on my plate, so much that I want to read. But that's to say, I will reread Berserk, and I would be curious to know then if my opinions on Berserk in general changed or not. Now, my opinion on Guts, Griffith, for example, has quite changed from the beginning, the first arcs, where I was obsessed with Griffith and everything he stood for, and I could really see how a child was born into nothing. He wants to make something of himself, and then how, you know, life took him to twists and turns. He was a very morally grey character up until he gets imprisoned, and that kind of undo him. And when he comes out of his prison, then's when he, you know, the eclipse happens soon after, and he makes the choices that he could. But I really liked Griffith because despite him being despicable, he was a despicable that made sense. Miura had taken its time with him to make us understand that he had made some certain choices that for his character made a lot of sense. I think in the last arc, especially the Fantasia Arc, he is, you know, recreating this kingdom and heading, you know, the head of his new kingdom, this kind of, you know, perfect heaven on earth, and is the commander of course, we know that there's much more darker themes underneath it, but I kind of stopped being so curious about him, and he kind of took a backseat. But I was so engrossed by the story of Casca. I really wanted to see this coming to an end, Casca again in her memory. Maybe that's why I put so much effort, I put so much attention on Casca, then ultimately feel disappointed when things didn't work out as I wished them to have. So Griffith, yeah, is there. I know he's plotting in the background. I know that, you know, things are moving at a slow pace as they should be, but again, it's not someone who I felt was prominent. I didn't pay much attention, and I feel much less intrigued by. And I think part of it is also because the intrigue with Griffith is also the dynamics between him and Guts and Casca. And of course, you know, these characters go on their own merry way. Casca and Guts are completely on another side doing something else, and Griffith is very far away from them, just trying to, you know, rule. And I guess eventually the fact that these 3 characters are not intertwined anymore as much. Of course they are in the background, everything is about them, right, and their dynamics, but they're very far away, so these dynamics are more hidden. I became less interested in Griffith automatically because it wasn't directly on the page with the other 2 characters. There was no direct confrontation, and again, I know that this would have eventually played out if Miura had the chance to finish his things. I know that, you know, things would have slowly built up to a crescendo, and that's probably eventually why I will go back to Berserk, because I do want to know what the crescendo would have ended. So there is hope for me to resume it. Now, before I go to the Moonchild, which is a very fascinating part of all of this, probably my favorite thing about the Fantasia Arc was the Moonchild bit, the plot about the Moonchild. All the other characters, in this final volume we have like a book. It's like a guidebook with all the other characters, which is amazing because I can really go back and learn things about the characters and stuff like that. All the other characters I really enjoyed their plot, how, you know, they're really building their camaraderie. I still don't care much about the kids. The witch a bit more than the little boy. I don't know, I put the names here. You know, I can't even remember the name of the boy. That's how much I don't care about him, I'm sorry. But Shrek. So I'm gonna call her Shrek, okay? So Shrek, the witch, she's I really like what this is going with Guts, in the sense that how protective and how, you know, she's kind of providing him with the love and care that Casca can't. Farnese, I'm very fascinated by Farnese. I wish to have seen where Miura would have taken us with Farnese and their brother and the dynamics, and even with Guts, because honestly that was a part of me where I thought maybe Guts and Farnese. I know it's not gonna be, I know it's probably like a betrayal to Casca and Guts, but if Casca is to a point where she doesn't want to have a relationship, which would make sense, I kind of see a bit of hope for Guts and Farnese, because I do want for Guts to have a love and someone to care for him and appreciate him, and we never really get around to it. Like, I think this is what Shrek the witch she's doing, so I'm grateful for that and I really enjoy that part. The Moonchild. Now, the Moonchild has been the highlight of the Fantasia Arc. Now, some of you tried to explain to me who the Moonchild is, and then I went online and I had a look. But feel free to correct me in the comments down below, because I know that, you know, there are many theories on it. But basically, the Moonchild, part of him is, you know, the boy that was supposed to be the child of Casca and Guts, but unfortunately she aborted after she was attacked during the eclipse. But Griffith used this embryo to come back to life, or like part of Griffith's personality is intertwined with the embryo and has become the Moonchild. It's like the more innocent part of Griffith, the human side of Griffith has merged with the embryo child, the child of, you know, what was supposed to be the child of Casca and Guts. And so now, certain times, without him being able to control it, the Moonchild, it's Griffith, basically. It's part of Griffith, his innocent side, if you can even say that the guy has an innocent tiny bit of himself. That would be the Moonchild. So this is my understanding. It's like a combo of the human side of Griffith and the child that was meant to be and unfortunately could never be. And it's an incarnation that comes out only certain times. And Casca, of course, she's very drawn to the child, while Guts is a bit more hesitant. And I don't know if because Guts is inside this, you know, the darkness that he has inside and everything, that it makes him a bit worried. Maybe part of Guts unconsciously knows what this, you know, with this Moonchild is, while Casca maybe doesn't, or maybe Casca just sees the good side of it. But seeing them, even so remotely, because again, they don't have a dynamic of a family at all, but even so remotely, taking care of his child, it made me think of what it could have been, and how Casca could have been as a mother and Guts as a father. And I would love to see it. I know there is the romantic side inside myself just saying, can we have a spin-off in an alternative reality where for one volume only we have only these characters being a piece and being a family? I know it's absurd because this is grim dark, this is not what Berserk is at all, but it made me really cherish the small moments of sweetness that this series actually full of. And I think, you know, you might see this series as such like a grim dark story without any hope, or, you know, displaying all of the atrocities and everything that humans can do to each other, the most depraved side of humanity. And it does that, and it does that very well. But I do see now and then hope. I do see the human, touching, lovable, graceful side of humans as well in this saga a lot. And I think it's because it contains all of these parts that really work so well. And the Moonchild, and seeing them taking care of his child, this beautiful boy, it's just that moment of hope. It's just that moment of love that I've cherished, because they're not often, but when they are, very powerful in this series. And I think this concludes my thoughts about this outstanding, like, it's the best manga I've ever read. It's the manga that I know I will reread over and over again. It's the manga that, if you don't mind explicit content, I'll say you can't skip. Like, Berserk is a staple. Like, I see Berserk as I would see Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones for fantasy. You need to experience it to understand. But overall, I think I put this off because I feel like it's an end of an era. finishing Berserk, at least Miura's Berserk. And it's just as any other end is very bittersweet. It doesn't give you all the answers you wished. It leaves you with a lot of things to think through. It leaves you a bit frustrated, but also with a lot of warmth. Like, if I think about all the journey, all of these characters, they really came through the pages to the point that I thought, oh, I never thought about making a book tattoo, but I thought maybe I should, you know, get myself a tattoo about Berserk, because that's how much I loved it. And in a more explicit, horrific way, I think it does cover so many aspects of humanity, history of wars, and the, you know, the complicated relationships between humans, the leftovers of trauma, what trauma can do to a body and a mind, but also the resilience of keep going despite, you know, when everything is going to shit and everything is horrible and bleak, and you would say, why? Guts sometimes go past his body, that it's trying to keep up, and it can't give up. Yes, to keep going. I see that also as part of, you know, being humans, where we might be put through everything. We might be put through some of the most horrific situations, and some of us manage to survive despite everything. And not only survive, but create something out of a destruction, create something out of pain and despair. So yeah, there is both sides, the yin and yang, I think, the way it explains that concept. It's amazing, guys. It's amazing. It's been a journey. I would love to hear what you thought about the Fantasia Arc specifically. And I love to hear, you know, when you go into these comments, explain to me points of view, or explain to me what you understood, or explain to me some of the things that I might have skipped, because again, it's my first read of a series, so I've missed out on probably a lot of nuances. But it's lovely to see the engagement in the comments. I hope you decide to stay. I've done a video explaining why I'm so busy lately, between work and postgraduate school and family, but I do try my best to kind of, you know, do reviews when I can, and spoiler reviews I think are very helpful because they allow me to speak a bit more. So I hope you decide to stay. I hope you take care of yourself. I hope to hear from you in the comments down below, and I'll see you next time. Ciao!